Hello and welcome to Videodust. This is our initial setup video, and I just want to explain what we have going here. On the upper right, we have some content coming in, and down here I have a screen grab going of the iPad. And on Videodust here, we have this area here is where your basic effect is going to load, and down here we have the siphon format and control center, and to the right this is your sort of global RGB. And these buttons are various black and whites, so you can black and white in, black and white the effect. And on the bottom here we have an RGB, which is an RGB split, which we'll get into shortly. And below the RGB and your global fade is various blend modes. And above that we have various smear modes, which we'll get into in various tutorials. And on the right here is our cue list, which once again we'll get into in more detail later. On this window here I've opened up the editor in TouchOSC, which is a few parameters in there we're going to need to change. So if we go up to the top of the window within Videodust, we have a setup tab. So we click that and we hit preferences. And within this window there's a few things. You have your basic audio setup, your driver. These are essentially just OS X audio drivers you have installed. We have input, output, and you have to remember that if you switch these, say if I'm using the Scarlett Solo USB at the moment, if I switch that to Blackmagic Audio, you need to turn the audio here off and back on. Okay, and blue means it's on. Underneath that we have your sampling rate, and then the in and out vector size. This is your buffer size setting. So the lower the number, the smaller the buffer, but the more likelihood of crackles in the audio. So a setting, 64, 256, mid-range is normally fine. Your input, output, these are your stereo ins and outs. This is normally what we have set up. Your audio driver setup window opens up audio MIDI setup. And the open I/O mappings is something maybe for future use if we use a multiple input audio card, multiple out. So at the moment we just have to set it to stereo. And below that we have the Videodust presets button. And essentially what you're doing here is you want to tell Videodust where you have your preset folder located. So if we click that, and I'm pointing it to my folder, tutorial presets, hit open. And then you want to give Videodust a little bit of time to reinitialize because it's loading up various presets and settings. So we have siphon enabled. You see it's clicked back on. So we're ready to go. This iPad IP address is the IP address it uses to point to the iPad. So if we go over to our setup window here, that local IP address here is what you want to input here. So if I pop that in, you want to make sure you type in each number, even if it's the same number, because it may reinitialize as a separate number. So I'm going to put all the numbers in. And once that is in, we can close that, and you want to hit the store button. This is a global store button which stores all these settings, which I'll show you in just a second. So we want to hit store and let it reinitialize again. And just to point out, back on the TouchOSC editor here, so this host ID here, this is your IP address of the Videodust machine. And these ports here, outgoing port should be set to 8,000, and the incoming port is set to 9,000. So I've come out of the TouchOSC editor window, and now I'm on the main effects selection window. That's chosen by the SEL button on the top right on the iPad, right here. So we have our list of effects. So let me just choose, I'll say crop, pick crop. And when using the iPad, when you select an effect, make sure that you then select a preset. So I'll choose, say, preset 2. And as you can see, the effect preset 2 is loaded. And we have our main mix slider here. And as you can see on the far left window, there's a button, active. And that's telling you there's connectivity between the iPad and Videodust. So if we just move, I'll show you these other elements here. The 1280 by 720 is your input resolution. Next to that is your deinterlace button, which is currently off because we have 720p 50 coming in. Next to that is a scroll show button, and what that is, if you're using a lighting desk and you're scrolling through presets on an encoder on the lighting desk, it'll fire off a constant stream of presets. And what the scroll does is it adds a little buffer into Videodust that stops the triggering of multiple effects. Okay, and next to that we have the siphon button here, which is currently on, and that sends our output to other siphon-enabled software. Okay, here we have the reset siphon button, which reinitializes your siphon input sources. And then next to that you have your frame rate, which is currently set to 50. And these drop-down menus, these are your input sources from siphon. So currently we're running a Blackmagic mini recorder, which is at 720p 50. And I've got another source coming from Catalyst. So if I choose that, it changes your resolution, and as you can see, it's changed our source window. If I go back, and this store button, all these parameters here, well, not all of them actually, it stores your frame rate, your input, your deinterlace, and your siphon enable. That's all stored in the store button as well, along with your preset folder and your iPad IP address. And over here we have your global output section, and we have this BW, which stands for black and white, and these various buttons. So the in turns your input black and white, the effects turns the effects black and white, and the out, it turns everything black and white. Then you have an RGB button here, which is an RGB split, which allows you to split the red, green, and blue colors. Yep, reset that, close the window. Then you have your red, green, and blue. And this here slider is your main mix between effect and clean. And you have your various smear modes, which are covered in the other tutorials. And these are your blend modes. Okay, so next we have the cue list, which is a handy way to fire off effects and presets during a show. So you have the step number, and you have which effect you're going to choose, and you have which preset. So step 1 we have neon number 6, and say step 2 we want to change that to, say, jitters number 7, and so on. And you can insert or you can delete. If I want to delete extrude 2, you can delete. And if you want to insert another one, you hit insert, and we can add, say, neon and preset 10. And the thing to remember, on the iPad you have presets from 1 to 12, but you can choose any number you want in the cue list. So you can go up to any pretty much any number you want. So once you've built your cue list, you need to remember to hit store. So this stores a cue list in the same preset folder that everything else is stored in. And so once you've built it, you want to turn it on here. And to start the cue list, if we hit the select button on the top of the iPad, if you notice there's a start cue list here. So once we press that, it'll trigger the first effect in the cue list. So if I hit start cue list, it's triggered the effect neon and preset number 6. And on the iPad interface, you'll notice on the bottom right, there's a next button. So you can just hit the next button, that'll trigger the next effect in the cue list. So I'll hit next again, and that will trigger jitters number 7. Okay, well that's it for the Videodust basic setup tutorial video. Have fun. Thank you.